Let's talk about making a super budget utility trailer. For this trailer, I started with a RV frame. You can go on Marketplace, Craigslist, whatever you like to use, and you can find these RV, motorhome, camper frames all over the place, you know, between 200 to 500 bucks. This one in particular was $400. It had no deck on it. It was just the frame itself. You can't see under the decking right now, but the first thing I did, there was a bunch of junk underneath the trailer, you know, some extra cross bracing and propane lines. I started by cutting all those out, and then I welded in some extra braces, or I cut and moved some braces to kind of stagger them so it had a little bit better, you know, strength in the middle to hold weight. Another thing I did, usually these RV frames will have these little arms sticking out, obviously to hold the body of the camper. I cut those off. I could have done it a little cleaner. If I really wanted to spend some time, I could have cut all those flush, but I just needed them out of the way. I didn't choose to extend the deck. I didn't feel like it would be super strong. Here's one of the examples. I left this one in place. I planned on welding another one up front so then I can eventually put a fender on these axles. But I didn't think that those had a lot of strength on the side, so I ended up cutting them off. I didn't want my trailer to be wide and have it weak on the edges. So the boards are sitting on the actual frame and the cross bracing of the trailer. As for the deck, these are just 2x6 boards. Pick them at Lowe's, Home Depot. They were pretty cheap. And then I went and bought these, you know, round-headed bolts, drilled a hole through the trailer in the wood, and then there's a nut on the backside with a lock washer, so I can remove all these if I needed to. And then I have another row right there and right there. And then for the back, because I couldn't reach inside this trailer bumper and put all the nuts on, I just went and bought a piece of 2-inch angle iron and then cut it to length, and I put just 2 on either end, so these ends are just slid into place underneath, captured by this angle iron. And then these 2 ends I was able to reach my arm underneath and put the nuts on. So just these 2 edge boards are actually bolted down. The rest just slip in. Obviously you can see a little bit of warp as they start to move, but they're not going to go far. I forgot to mention, one of the biggest things I did to this trailer was I shortened it up. So this bumper was about 4 feet longer. I didn't necessarily need a trailer that long, and I also didn't want to spend the money on the super long 2x6 boards because they get kind of expensive when you start to get longer. So I chopped the frame. I took 4 feet off, and then I welded the bumper back onto the trailer so I could maintain the mount for the lights and the license plate. And I shortened up the trailer. It does make the trailer a little interesting. The axles are pretty far back, but it pulls like a dream. It pulls straight, doesn't shake, shimmy. The second big thing I did was I moved one of the axles forward. So this trailer originally had smaller tires on it and 13-inch wheels, and they were too small. So I ended up getting these 15-inch steel wheels, trailer wheels, and these tires, but they were too big and they were touching in the middle. So this trailer style was actually super simple. So this axle right here, the actual axle bolts into this bracket, and the whole axle just drops right out. So when you unbolt the axle, there's 4 bolts total. The whole axle just comes out. You're just left with this mounting bracket, and it was only stitch welded. So I just cut the welds, and then I slid the bracket up. I can't remember how far, you know, maybe 6 inches or something, enough to get a 4-inch gap in between the tires. And then I just welded it front and back. I did it on both sides. So this front axle has been moved forward. This rear one, obviously I haven't touched it, stayed the same. The rest of it was just super simple. I bought, you know, tractor enamel paint and just put it on with a paintbrush. I could have sprayed it, but the paintbrush, I wanted to lay it on thick so it'd be durable. I painted the whole frame before I put the decking on, so the whole underside is painted so it wouldn't rust. This trailer was actually pretty decent. There was no actual rust, just some surface rust. Some of these trailers you have to be careful. If the frames are rusted, they're not going to be as strong. So try to find one that's pretty decent. This one was pretty solid. I also added these tie downs. I added 4 per side. These 2 back ones are a little spaced out farther because of the axle, but it works great enough. I've moved my entire house on this trailer and it worked great. And then I just got a cheap Harbor Freight taillight setup, and I just ran it all the way to the back. It's got turn signals, brake lights, lights up, everything works great. The jack was replaced. The jack that was on it was ripped off, and they broke the bolts and tried to weld them. I cut all that out, welded on a new jack. Everything works great. I even have a rack. I decided to keep the rack for the battery in case I ever decide to add a winch to this. This trailer you could use to load, ATVs, maybe a smaller side-by-side. Its purpose is not really a vehicle hauler, a toy hauler. The frame itself is pretty thin. This was a lighter duty camper. If you wanted to actually haul heavier equipment, you would definitely go find RVs with a thicker frame. A lot of these RVs, this is just like an I-beam, a real thin I-beam. A lot of the bigger RVs have this actual boxed frame throughout the whole thing. This one's kind of lighter duty. So I just use it for a general purpose, moving my house, loading some stuff up. You could weld ramps to the back if you wanted to. I decided not to. I really don't have any toys to be hauling around like that. And that is how you get a super budget trailer. If you can do a little bit of welding and a little bit of cutting, it's super simple. This trailer in total cost me about $800 to build it. It started with a $400 frame, about $400 in metal, bolts, lumber, things like that. Under $1,000, and this trailer does exactly what I need it to, and it pulls like a dream. And it's legal and registered.